Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be a ranking of all of my Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today we're going to be ranking all of my Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes. And the reason why I wanted to sit down to film this video is because in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be sitting down and I'm going to be rearranging some of these eyeshadow palettes if I haven't rearranged them yet. It's going to be a separate dedicated video to just rearranging some Natasha Denona palettes. And yeah, I thought that before I sit down to do that, I could let you know about my favorites and why and all that, because after today's video, that all of those color stories and at least some of these palettes are going to look completely different, and it's probably going to live in my collection for a while like that. But if you want my recommendations on some of the Natasha Denona palettes, then this video may be a good one to watch. But before we get into the video, it may be good to know that I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, which greatly skews my makeup preferences. And because I have been buying, trying, and reviewing makeup for more than a decade, I also have some very strong favorites. And if you enjoy content about eyeshadow palettes, essence, and Catrice, and getting the use out of your makeup, then maybe stay tuned and join the Snow Angel Club by clicking subscribe down below. So before we get into it, I want you to guess how many Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes I actually have, because I am someone who I think is known by now as, you know, someone with a larger eyeshadow palette collection for sure, but I'm not someone who has made it their, like, goal in life to own every single Natasha Denona palette on the planet. I feel that Natasha Denona does amazing eyeshadow from a quality standpoint, but I definitely think her color stories are just not for me all the time. I have seen so many Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes where I look at the color story and I go like, I like that shade, and that shade, and the rest of the palette can go. Which is why I don't own all of them. This is a very expensive brand and I don't buy things blindly. Natasha Denona is also not for sale where I live. I live in the Netherlands, and it's just a brand that is more difficult for me to get. I bought some of these through French Sephora, some others I've bought through Beautylish or Cult Beauty. So I either need to travel to a completely different country, or I need to go online and sometimes also pay for shipping and handling fees, which is a bit of a pain, and it makes it even more expensive to buy the brand, which is why I am extra careful when I recommend Natasha Denona. I have the things I like, but I definitely don't think the brand does everything really well. And like I said, one of the things the brand needs to work on is just sheer color selection. A lot of the palettes that are released, I feel, you know, just, you know, for instance, the midi bronze that was out, like it looked too monochromatic, whereas other things she's done just look like a couple of random colors whacked together. The Circle Loco, if anyone remembers. For a hot minute, I was interested in that trichrome palette, whatever it was called, but then it only had 3 multi-chromes, and I was like, I don't need the rest. So with Natasha Denona, I feel there's always, like, I very much pick and choose from the line what I like, which is why I don't have everything. And if by now you've guessed, I have 8 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes left. I used to have 9, but I decluttered my Lila palette in my last declutter that I posted in March, early April. So that's why today we're going to be ranking 8 Natasha Denona palettes. Number 8 is one that I don't regret buying for sure. I think there is merit to this palette, but I think in hindsight, if the bigger version of this palette hadn't gotten a lot of hype as it did, I probably now in hindsight may not have necessarily purchased this. So even though I enjoy it and it definitely fills a certain gap within my makeup collection, the Mini Love is one that makes me go like, do I really need this or not? I've kept it around for now because it is Natasha Denona, and there are like 3 or 4 shades in this that I really enjoy, but there is definitely one where I'm like, not really. So this eyeshadow palette is of course the smaller version of the Midi Love palette, which was released for a Valentine's Day collection, and I think about a year later they did this. The reason why I never bought the bigger Love palette is because it was far too pink heavy, and I have a cooler undertone, and the kind of pinks in that palette were a little bit more warm toned, which I didn't love. But this definitely has 3 cool-ish leaning shades, especially in these 2 like pinky purpley shades. This dusty lilac almost, I love as a transition or a crease shade. This purple is great for deepening things up, and I really enjoy the shimmer that we get here. The only 2 shades I don't really understand are these 2. For me, these 2 don't necessarily exist in this palette. I don't reach for them a lot when I use this palette. I sometimes pull in the peachy pink, but I feel it's too warm toned and it very much clashes with what these have to offer. And these like champagne-y golds, I never really reach for. I stick them in my inner corner as a highlight, and that's pretty much all I tend to do with them. So that's why this one, not necessarily a regret. I really like those 3 shades, but for a 5-pan and for how much these go, I mean, they're still 25 euros a pop. I think 30 by now with all the prices having gone up, but I think I did pay 25 for mine. And I just don't feel it's worth that price point if you get that little use out of it. Like for 25 euros, even if it's this small, I still want to be able to use every single shade, and that's not the case with this one. The next eyeshadow palette in this ranking is number 7, which is the My Dream palette. And the Natasha Denona My Dream palette was one that I was interested in, and this is actually the palette that made me realize that I should just reorganize some of these color stories, because the My Dream palette is the palette that bridges the gap between the glam and the retro, which we'll see coming up later for sure. So the My Dream, I feel, is if you took the glam and you took the retro, mixed them up and turned up the saturation. So this is why I feel it goes with those 2 palettes really well, because some of these plummy shades will balance out the retro very well. Some of the taupey shades this has will balance out the glam really well. The only thing I just don't really like are these warm tones, which is it's a running game with Natasha Denona palettes, is that there's always like 4 or 5 shades in the palette that I don't really see myself using. So in here, it's definitely like this warm tone brown, this like gold shade, this warm rosy pink, and that peachy shade. Like this I can still get away with. It's very close to my skin tone, so that works. This is definitely more of a taupey leaning shade. This is like a rose gold taupe leaning shade as well. Those I love, but those 4, and I do have to say, I tried out the entire palette, used every single shade, and I did do a warm tone look with this, and I found it was far more neutral tone than I had expected. But this is another one of those palettes that looked really differently to me in pictures I found online than what I ended up getting in real life. So when I got it home, I was like, this looks different. So pretty palette for sure. Is it a must-have in your collection? If you're anything lighter than a medium skin tone and you don't have a warm undertone, I don't think you're gonna like this. This is a neutral palette for people with medium to deep skin that have a warmer undertone, I feel. So I just don't feel it's made for everyone, but I think it has a couple of really nice complementary shades, which is why I definitely want to pull this one out most and then disperse some of these shades between those other 2 palettes that I just mentioned, but those are still coming up. So yeah, the My Dream, really pretty, amazing quality, but I don't think I'll ever use this color story like this again. Number 6 is the Mini Zendo, and this was actually a surprise to me. This I wasn't going to get. The main Zendo palette was another one where I liked some of the shades, but I didn't like enough of it to really warrant the price point. But then I spotted this at Sephora last year, and I was like, I think I like the Mini Zendo. And despite this looking like a more warm-toned version almost to the Mini Love, at least I feel it does, this has a couple of things going for it that makes it work for me. These 2 peachy tones because they are a really nice blend with a bit of a pink undertone. And when I blend these out, that pink tone kind of comes through because I have that cooler undertone. So I feel this is a bit better for me, and it's less of a contrast than with the Love, I feel, which is why this is ranked higher. I love the green shade in the middle, and I really like the deeper plummy shade we get in here. This really nicely goes with the green, but it also goes with the peachy shades. And this shade right here, I don't love these very light mattes, but it's exactly the shade I need to work with all 4 of these other shades to get more versatility out of the palette. So for me, this is definitely a successful one. I love the quality of this. It's a bit unconventional for me to like it because it looks a lot more warm toned than you might expect I would like perhaps. But that's why it's ranked in the number 6 spot, because I do have a couple of other things that I just like better. Something I like better in number 5th spot, and this may surprise some people, but the retro glam. And now that it exists and now that it's here, I don't feel we needed this. And that's why this is in the number 5 spot. This is a really stunning color story. Let's just start with the palette itself first. Like, this is really good. It's nice and light. I like the greens we get in here. We have enough neutrals that are also more on the taupey side of things, and then some warmer rosy tones. I like it. Is this a good translation of the mini retro to a larger palette? I think the answer to that question is yes as well. But here's why this didn't need to exist. There is a palette called the Lime Crime Venus XL2 that I have been raving about for years, ever since I bought it. And that color story can give you similar looks to this one. The only difference between those 2 palettes for me is that this has removable pans and that one doesn't. But I feel that, even though they're not 100% the same, I mean, I did a short where I swatched them out together with the mini retro actually, just to see whether there's any overlap or not. And I just feel that the color story already existed. And it's just, the Lime Crime palette was so overlooked by the makeup community. It was definitely a palette that a lot of people said they didn't like. And now this exists and a lot of people were hyping this up, and it was like, what about this other palette that's been around for 5 years that everybody hated upon? Like, everybody really, really liked to talk dirty about the Lime Crime Venus XL, how it was patchy and it was too light and gray and ashy. And then it's released by a brand everybody loves and everybody goes gaga for it. So that sometimes just irks me. But there's another reason why I feel this didn't exist. Because this already existed. And I know this was put into place because so many people were hyping up this and everybody was saying, we need that as a larger palette. I just feel that this doesn't really add much. If you already have the glam, if you already have the mini retro, and sagey greens can be found in other palettes as well. So I don't necessarily feel this had to exist. Is it pretty? Am I going to get more use out of it? Is it perfect for spring? Yes. Oh, yes. And this is definitely going to be on the going back to palettes pile, even though this is not that long ago that I tried it for the first time. But I think in May, I'm going to have to put it in my, I need to go back to these palettes pile because this is stunning. But I felt I had an OG Natasha Denona palette that I just liked a little bit better than the retro glam. Number 4, the Natasha Denona Gold. Sadly discontinued. This sometimes seems to come back in stock for like a hot minute and then it's gone again. I don't know, but this seems to be gone now for good. And this is the warm tone color story that I wanted Natasha Denona to do. This was not originally on my wish list. Like, when this first launched, I wasn't convinced. And I think you can see what I mean with Natasha Denona color stories being repetitive and a little, like, monochromatic. I mean, this used to have a very yellow tone gold in the middle that I took out and put in my Lila palette, and I put one of my favorite shades from the Lila in here because I felt it worked a bit better. But, you don't necessarily need all these matte brown shades, just like you don't necessarily need both of these like bronzy leaning shimmers either. For me, there is, however, a couple of really good shades in the palette. I quite enjoy the dark brown. I, of course, like this. Together with the mustard, like this little corner, is one of my favorite things about this palette. I really enjoy these two shimmers as well. And then, you know, one of these three mattes I would have liked. So yeah, this is just, it's a good palette for sure. I really enjoy the quality. This is the palette that made me realize how good Natasha Denona can do eyeshadow for sure. When I bought the Lila, that was my first one. I wasn't convinced. And I just don't think it was anyone's favorite at any point in time. But yeah, I feel that where Natasha Denona shines isn't in the larger palette that she seemed to focus on at first. There seems to be more of a focus on the minis and the midi-sized palettes now, and I think that that's where it's at for this brand for sure, and at least for what I like from the brand. Time for the top three. In the number three place, Mini Retro. I think that this is perfection, and they shouldn't have meddled with it. We get the like rosy peachy shades, we get the sagey greens, we don't have any of the neutrals. I didn't necessarily need those because I already have a bunch of them. And if you combine this with the glam, you get the same thing. Like, we didn't need the retro glam. We really didn't. And of course, the shade of all shades, the one at the top. Can you see? Oh, there, the light is catching it. The light is catching it. I just love it. The undertones of these greens are more gray toned than the ones in the retro glam as well. The ones in the retro glam are more pastel-y green, whereas these have a stronger gray, almost cocky leaning vibe to them. So in terms of specialty, I feel this palette has a lot more to offer, and I love how you can do an all green look, you can go all peach, you can glam it up by using that very intense shimmer all over. The one thing this palette doesn't have is a deepening up shade, but I could use the Zendo for that if I wanted to. So this is in the number three spot because this is perfection. Perfection. But there are just two palettes that I feel I get more versatility out of, which is why this is in the number three spot. And it may be no surprise that my number two and number one are going to be the retro and the glam. But in what order did I put them? The retro in the number two spot because I like this. But this again has a couple of shades where I'm like, really? Did we need that? Now, when I show you the color story, it looks a bit messy because I dropped it. And some of the shades broke and fell out of the palette. But because I knew I was going to rearrange this color story anyway, I just slapped them in willy-nilly. And I was like, I'm going to rearrange this color story anyways. I'm going to put some of the shades from the My Dream in here for sure. And the things I'm going to take out are these like rosy, warmer things because these are just not my shades. They're just not. What I do really enjoy, I'm gonna have to repress it, I'm afraid, but this purple in the bottom I like, which got the most damage. I like this entire row here. I really enjoy that taupe shimmer, and I really enjoy these two lighter pinks, and I'm also a pretty big fan of that deeper mauve plum. So this shade I think I want to keep as well, but most of this side of the palette is gonna go. Can you just tell? I didn't necessarily need those shades in this palette, so this is what I mean with Natasha Denona color stories not being the best. Are they pretty? Are they really good eyeshadow? I think the quality is amazing of this, but I didn't need all these shades. I just didn't. Next up, last but not least, in the number one spot is my glam. And the reason why I rank this higher than the retro is because I feel that this works a bit better for me in terms of an all-round color story, because we do get a little bit of warmth, especially like in this corner here. But the only shade from it that I wouldn't really use is the gold. Like that gold shade can go. And everything else in here, like, I can get down with. Do I prefer these like three cooler tones that we get here and like this? For sure, for sure. Those I enjoy a lot. Like these three and then that line, like, It only has 5 mattes and everything else has shimmer. which is another thing it has going for it. I have said in the past how this is the Naked 2 but revamped. So if the Naked 2 color story appeals to you but you want it in an updated formula, the glam for sure. I've actually put them side by side and they are very, very similar indeed. So yeah, I'm not sure yet how much of this color story I'm going to take apart, but I definitely want to put some of the shades from the My Dream in this one as well, just to make it a little bit more exciting. So that's it. Those are my 8 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes ranked in all their glory. Let me know in a comment down below how you would rank these. I would be very curious to know for sure. So let me know. But for now, if you would like to thumbs up the video, I would greatly appreciate that. And if you want to subscribe to the channel so you can stay tuned to when I upload new videos, that would be lovely as well. I still have another couple of videos coming to you in Eyeshadow Palette Week because we're not yet done. This is only the 3rd one, so I have a couple of other things in store for sure. So if you'd like to stay tuned for all of that goodness, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye!